Said to me, "Father, I feel more blue this morning." And he's a Michigan State fan, so he's blue as in sad. And I thought, well, I guess a lot of people feel blue. If you're blue, like Michigan, you feel great. And if you're like me, you're probably like me and that dude who feels sad today. But you know what? Jesus is more important, so that's why we're here. Here we go. I want to retrace for a moment what happens with Zacchaeus in our gospel, because I think this is one of the best stories in the gospel and encounters with Jesus Christ, especially in the Gospel of Luke. So here we are at the beginning, and what happens? Zacchaeus has this great desire to see Jesus Christ because he's heard about him. And so, because of this desire, he seeks to go see him, but there's a problem. There's things in the way. There's these obstacles, whether it's people, whether it's buildings, whatever it is, maybe it's trees, there's things in the way, and this short guy just can't see Jesus. So what does he do? He's not content. He wants to see Jesus, and so he does something desperate. He moves. He moves. He's not willing to stay in the blocked view. He moves by climbing up a tree, which I think would be a kind of hilarious scene, if you will. I mean, I can't imagine climbing a tree today as an adult and a branch might break. Yikes. But just to watch somebody, the short man, climb a tree, I don't know, it's just a funny image. But that's what he does, because he wants to shift his view so he can see Jesus. Then, of course, here's, I think, one of the most important parts of the gospel. Because he did that, Zacchaeus risked something. What did he risk? He risked actually being seen. Because no longer could he be lost in the crowd. Standing in a tree, he is now very visible. He's vulnerable. And he can be seen not just by Jesus, but by everyone else. Here's what I think is really powerful about this gospel. When I started the gospel, there was those words, Jesus intended to pass through the town. He intended to move through it quickly. And of course, he changed his mind. He sees Zacchaeus, and he decides, you know what? I'm supposed to move quickly. I'm supposed to go to Jerusalem. That's where he's headed. We know that. He's headed to Jerusalem for our salvation. And he decides, no, this guy is more important right now. This is just like a couple weeks ago in the same gospel where we heard in Luke chapter 15 how the good shepherd will leave the 99 in search of the one. This is what Jesus is doing. He is putting the 99, all of us, on hold for the one. He is stopping for Zacchaeus' sake because he wants to bring salvation to him. The saddest part of this gospel is the response from the people. They see Zacchaeus and they grumble. Why would Jesus care about him? Doesn't he know he's a sinner? You know, this is Luke. This is the recurring theme for Luke. He's said this over and over again the past several weeks. This tendency within us to think, I'm not as bad as that person. You know, last week with the Pharisee and the tax collector, thank you, Lord, that I am not like him. The reality, my friends, is we're all Zacchaeus. We all are. We're all sinners, and we're all in need of God's grace and mercy. And so the challenge for us then is to be a little different than the group of the people around Zacchaeus. Instead of that, is to be thanking God. I'm glad you stopped for them because they needed you, right? And of course, we know that this encounter, this experience of Jesus Christ for Zacchaeus, changed his whole life, changed everything. So what does this mean for us this weekend? Well, I propose to you this, what it means for us is we need to pray about how we're going to be like Zacchaeus. How are we going to retrace his footsteps in our own spiritual lives? So the first thing is, I think it's safe to assume that all of us here have a desire to see Jesus. Because why would we be here in a church on a Sunday morning? Because we want to see Christ. And so that means then, if we want to see Jesus, the first thing we have to do is to be like Zacchaeus and to be aware of the obstacles in our lives. What are the things that exist that obstruct our view of Jesus? Because we all have them. For some of us, it might be a material thing, For others of us, it might be an addiction to something. For all of us, it's our sinfulness. But what are those things in our lives personally that obstruct our view from Jesus and prevent us from seeing Christ in our lives? And once we have the humility and the honesty to identify those things that obstruct our view, then we can do something. Then we can move. And we can shift our perspective. So for Zacchaeus, it was climbing up a tree. For us, it's going to depend on what that thing is. But it does require movement, that we go somewhere different so that we have the opportunity to see Christ. And then, of course, when we see Christ, to let ourselves be seen by him. The same Christ that stopped and put the rest of the world on hold for Zacchaeus will do the same for you. Will do the same for each one of us here. Many of you know I've preached about it I preached about it several weeks ago about my friend who is in rehab. And I sent him the homily where I talked about, I'm broken, you're broken, we're all broken, we need Jesus. Because he inspired that homily. And he said to me, it brought him to tears, and he appreciated it, and he wanted me to tell you all something. He said, you have my permission to say this. The thing that prevented him from seeking help earlier in his struggles was feeling like he would be rejected. It was the same feeling of what Zacchaeus experienced in our gospel, that reaching out for help, he would be like, why help you? You're an addict, right? It was a fear of rejection from those in his life. And what he's learned is those in his life did not reject him, that they're there for him, and they're loving him through it, and they're helping him. That's the encouragement for us. That just as Jesus sees us and helps us, we too as a community of faith need to be there for one another and strengthen one another and say, you know what, I know you need Christ. I'm there for you. I'm here to help you. And of course, when we have that moment, we have this great experience where Jesus changes our lives. Zacchaeus used that experience in generosity to share it with others. We're called to share it with others as well. So this weekend, I think all of us can reflect on this. How are we seeing Jesus? Where are we obstructing our view from Christ? How is Christ calling us to shift our perspective so that we can see him, be seen by him, and be changed by him?